Hey there guys, how's it going? Back with another top 10 list. So, unfortunately we're back at that time of year again. It's time to do my top 10 worst movies of 2019. Stay tuned for my top 10 best movies of 2019. That video is going to be out within the next couple of days, give or take. So, yeah, let's get started. So, coming in at number 10, we have Aladdin 2019. Now, this movie was directed by Guy Ritchie, and it's really sad. I don't know what's happened to Guy Ritchie. Like, I used to like this guy as a director. I liked some of his older movies. I think that Snatch is probably his best movie, and he's made a few movies here and there that I've really enjoyed back in the day. However, in recent years, his movies have been absolute trash. They've just gotten bad to worse, and this is his worst ever movie. Um, this is a remake that nobody asked for, right? Nobody wanted a remake to the 1992 Aladdin movie, okay? There wasn't a single person alive who asked for that movie to be remade, okay? You could never recapture what was done in that animated movie with Robin Williams and whatnot, okay? So this movie was just pointless. You're going to be having a bit of a deja vu in this video because several of the movies on this list are remakes, and this is the first in a long list of shitty remakes in 2019. I mean, come on, guys, stop with the remakes, okay? Nobody wanted a remake to the 1992 Aladdin movie, okay? I mean, the best thing I can say about this movie, and the only reason why it isn't higher on the list, is nostalgia. Listening to the songs in this movie, you know, the terrible versions of them in this movie, made me want to go back and watch the original. And, you know, hours after me and my missus went to see this in the cinema, we went home and we watched the original and we had a great time. So, yeah, that's the best thing I can say about this movie, is it led to me watching and enjoying the original. So, yeah, Aladdin. We have Terminator Dark Fate, or Terminator Dark Fate of the franchise, as I would call it, or Woke Fate, or all these other names people have come up for this movie, man. This is the movie that killed the Terminator franchise, and I know that there have been some pretty bad Terminator, movies, some sequels. The Terminator franchise in general is a series that most people, have wanted to end for a long time. It's definitely a series that has been dragged out. It's definitely a series that has outstayed its welcome. I totally agree. But this just puts the final nail in the coffin. This movie is an absolute dumpster fire. It's your typical CGI fuckfest that looks like a video game cutscene, and not even a good video game cutscene. I'm not even talking about like a Square Enix video game cutscene. I'm talking about a low budget, like 7 month developed terrible video game tie-in. That's what this movie looks like. I'm not even kidding. It looks that cheap. It has your typical feminist and woke rhetoric that it tries to push, that it fails with miserably because people don't care about that shit. And the fact that this movie, not only did it underperform, this movie flat out failed at the box office. I don't even think it made back its budget. It goes to show you people are not interested in this trash, and it doesn't matter how many times you try to tug at our heartstrings with nostalgia, it isn't going to work. Nobody cares about Terminator anymore. Okay, this franchise died in the 90s. Alright, nobody wanted any more Terminator sequels after the second one. Okay, the first movie was a masterpiece, an amazing survival horror. The second one was a great action movie. Nobody wanted any more. Okay, so no more Terminator movies. Don't want any more. Let's end it at this terrible train wreck of a movie. Okay, so moving on. We have one of the most lame attempts at comedy I think I've ever experienced, and that is this movie MIB, or Men in Black International, whatever you want to call it. So, how to reboot a franchise. So, the Men in Black series had Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, who obviously carried that franchise. I mean, they had on-screen chemistry, they had perfect comedic timing. They were able to take those sci-fi elements and those special effects and sort of blend them with a suspension of disbelief. That's why those movies worked so well. You had on-screen chemistry, you had clever writing, and those movies were fun. This movie has none of that. This movie has Tessa Thompson doing, those stupid little smirks that she does where she thinks that she's funny but she's not. It has terrible feminist undertones, like dialogue where she'll say shit like "I'm not a queen, only in the sense that all women are," and stuff like that. That's the extent, that's the extent of the humor in this movie. Just feminist shit. Yeah, it has your terrible shitty CGI. It has just a real unlikable protagonist. Like I said, this Tessa Thompson woman is just so irritable and really unlikable in this movie and doesn't look like she wants to be there. She spends the whole movie smirking and, making like terrible sarcastic one-liners. And yeah, Chris Hemsworth in this movie. Chris Hemsworth just needs to fire his agent. I'm not even kidding. He picks the dumbest, most ridiculous movies out there. Like outside of Thor, which is his like marquee character, he just picks the stupidest, most degrading roles possible. I don't know how this guy, can't see that these types of movies do nothing for him. They do nothing more him, for him other than collect a paycheck. All right, they do nothing for his profile. He acts like an idiot the whole movie, just like he does in every movie that isn't Thor. Acts like a pure douchebag idiot. He's not funny. Liam Neeson's in this movie, and the only reason, and I mean the only reason Liam Neeson is in this movie is to sell tickets because they know that Liam Neeson is proven box office. So if you put Liam Neeson in a movie, even if it's just an extended cameo, which is what he is here, an extended cameo, you're gonna sell tickets. All right, that was the only reason he's in this movie. He had nothing to do in this movie. All right, he was useless, absolutely wasted. So yeah, this movie is a pile of shit. Again, it's another movie that bombed at the box office and then went way into obscurity when it came out. I mean, even Liam Neeson couldn't help this movie succeed at the box office. Like, if he wasn't in the movie, can you imagine how much it would have failed then? Like, how much it would have bombed? I mean, come on now. So yeah, terrible humor, terrible effects. It's just another shitty reboot that nobody asked for, nobody wanted. There was no demand for this movie at all. We didn't want another Men in Black movie. So, another franchise that I hope stays dead. We don't need another one. Alright, moving on. Again, I'm having a deja vu here. We have another shitty ass remake that nobody asked for. And I covered this in my review. Pet Sematary. The original Pet Sematary is a movie that traumatized me when I was a kid. And it's weird because I watched a lot of creepy shit when I was a kid. I watched a lot. I was a bit of a sociopath as a child. I was a lot worse than I am now. When I was younger, and I used to watch a lot of fucked up shit. But the one movie that I remember having an impact on me, the one horror movie that genuinely terrified me and gave me nightmares, was the original Pet Sematary. And I think it was because that movie had some disturbing imagery, some practical effects and whatnot. This movie, this remake that nobody asked for, is essentially a cliche modern day horror movie. It has all the modern day garbage horror cliches. It has loud noises. It has jump scares, which are just so out of place. It has out of place dream sequences, which are clearly dream sequences. Yeah, I mean, this movie has dream sequences on top of dream sequences. It has the most cliche, like, horror movie tropes, like a little girl who's scary and wears a white cloak, and oh, it's scary. There's a little girl. I mean, it's like trying to be Silent Hill or The Ring or some shit. We've seen all this shit before. All right, there's nothing you can do with this franchise. All right, there's nothing you can do with Pet Sematary that we haven't seen before done better. Okay, a shitty remake, had terrible acting, terrible dialogue. I don't know how they messed this movie up so bad, but I guess the main thing I want to point out about it is it doesn't need to exist. We don't want remakes. Okay, stop remaking movies. All right, so yeah, Pet Sematary remake, absolute crap. The only reason it wasn't higher on this list, and I genuinely was surprised because when I saw this movie, I thought this might have been like top 2, top 3. Sadly, there are worse movies than this year. So let's talk about it. So we have a movie that I reviewed last week. Charlie's Angels, the reboot. What else can I say? What else can I say about this movie that hasn't already been said? What else can I really say about this movie that other people haven't said? Haven't gone into more, in depth, breaking down everything that is wrong with this movie. This is, of course, another box office bombshell, another box office failure, a disaster. Didn't even make its budget back once again, just like Woke Fate. It's directed by Elizabeth Banks, who is your typical. She's your cliched, self-entitled, man-hating feminist slag who basically won't take responsibility for her own failures. She thought it was acceptable to come out before this movie during the marketing and say, this movie isn't for men, this is a feminist movie, this is for girl power. And then, when the movie doesn't even make its budget back, she comes out and says, oh, it's because of men. Men didn't like the movie because they're misogynists. And yeah, they didn't go to see it because they don't like feminist movies. Well, you shouldn't have attacked them then, should you? You shouldn't have called it a feminist movie. You should have just called it a movie. A movie that anybody could watch. The original Charlie's Angels movies were self-aware, dumb action comedies that men seem to enjoy. So why did men like those movies but they didn't like this movie? I'll tell you why. Do you want to know why? Let me whisper it to you. Let me just be as blunt as possible and cut you in on a little secret. The movie sucked. Your movie sucked, Elizabeth Banks. Because you suck as a director, right? And your actors, Kristen Stewart and the rest of them, I can't remember their names, they suck. The movie was terrible, okay? It had terrible, choppy, unrealistic, fake-looking action sequences. It had terrible special effects, obvious stunt doubles, obvious wire work, some of the worst acting I've seen in a long time. It was garbage. And if you guys want to see my review, I went in depth, breaking down about everything that was wrong with that garbage ass movie. Moving on. This is one that's going to confuse a lot of people and is going to piss a lot of people off, and I'm aware this isn't going to be, this isn't going to be very popular with my viewing audience. I did a 22-minute rant. In fact, it might have been even longer, but I think it was around about 22 minutes as to why I hated this movie. Toy Story 4. Now, I'm not going to say any more about it. Look, I've spoken, I have ranted, I have complained, I have moaned, I have bitched enough about this movie. Toy Story 4, if you guys want to know why that's on this list and why that is so high, just go and watch my review. I'll leave it in the description section. I went in depth. I did, like I said, I ranted for over 22 minutes on why I despise this movie. So moving on. Movie that when I saw it earlier this year, and when this movie came out, I thought for sure this was going to be number one. I thought surely nothing is going to top this. Well, of course I'm talking about Captain Marvel. This is quite possibly the worst. It's definitely one of the worst. It is, I would say it's potentially the worst superhero movie of all time. Alright, and I'm including films like Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. I'm including films like Batman and Robin. I'm including films like Fan4stick, which came out in 2015. I'm including those movies. This is the worst superhero movie I think I've ever seen. And this movie was an epic failure on so many levels. It failed as a comic book adaptation. It failed as an action movie. It failed as a drama. It failed as a spectacle because the movie looked like shit. Let's be real. The special effects in this movie were worse than the special effects in Terminator Dark Fate. I'm not even kidding. Alright, that's why this movie's higher up on the list than that one. This movie was worse than that. I would rather watch Terminator Dark Fate than watch this again. I'm not even kidding. Brie Larson is the most insufferable, unlikable, just really smug, actress I think I've ever seen. She oozes smugness on screen. She oozes negativity. She ruins any scene that she's in. She is just she's one of these individuals. It's kind of hard to describe it, but just every time she is on screen, the way that she delivers her lines and how monotone she is, and how just the facial expressions she does, and just how non-genuine and insincere she comes across when she's trying to be emotional, and it's just horrible acting. The movie has some of the worst CGI I think I've ever seen. This movie has CGI from a straight to DVD 90s Power Ranger movie. I'm not even kidding. That's how bad the CGI in this film is. The set pieces, everything looks like shit. The only thing that could have potentially saved this movie was an over the top performance from Samuel L. Jackson, and Samuel L. Jackson is a very entertaining actor, but even he couldn't save this movie. Right? He couldn't save this from being the train wreck that it was. The worst superhero movie of all time, Captain Marvel. Another one I reviewed, and this is the movie Hellboy, another remake, another terrible remake that nobody wanted. There was no demand for a Hellboy remake. Nobody was asking for this. Nobody wanted this. Now, guys, I did a review for this movie, right? And let me explain to you guys how bad this movie is, because I don't even know if I want to even begin to describe the sheer vulgarity of this movie. But the best way I can sum up how bad this movie is, there were people in my review, in the comment section, who actually said to me that my review of this movie was more entertaining than the movie itself. That's how bad this movie is. That people would rather watch my video, my review for the movie, actually critiquing the movie and talking about how shit it is, than actually watching the movie itself. That's how you know a movie sucks. That's when you know when I am more entertaining. Me talking on camera is more entertaining than the movie itself. That's how you know how bad this movie is. The movie's vulgar. Again, it's another one that has an over reliance on CGI. It tries to copy, like recent R-rated comic movies like Deadpool and whatnot, with its profanity. They've got to say the F word every 2 seconds. And again, I covered that in my review too, how juvenile this movie was, and like it was written by a 14-year-old or something. It's got just the worst type of juvenile humor you could think of. Just what a load of shit this movie was. And again, when I saw this one in the cinema, I was shocked that this wasn't number one. I thought that no movie is going to top this. No movie is going to be as bad as this. Well, I was wrong. And this is going to annoy people. I understand. This is going to piss a lot of people off, because for whatever reason, and I hold my hands up, I don't understand why, a lot of people seem to like this movie. In fact, a lot of people seem to love this movie. I don't get it. Guys, I don't understand. This was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm talking about It Chapter 2, or Shit Chapter 2 as I like to call it. My review for this movie actually got censored and demonetized because me describing this movie and describing the vulgarity and how disgusting this movie is, and how, as a drama, as a horror, and as a just as an entertaining, as an entertainment piece in general, how wrong this movie is. The video actually got censored. Me talking about this movie, that's how much I hated this movie. That me talking about it, was too edgy for people to hear. Like, it was too edgy for advertisers. First of all, some of you are going to say, how is this movie worse than Hellboy? At least Hellboy, as shit as that movie is, at least that movie had the decency to be short. This movie is 3 hours long. Guys, it's a horror movie, and it's 3 fucking hours long. Not only that, but it is some of the most boring, lazy filmmaking I've ever seen in my entire life. This movie has some dreadful CGI. Not just in the, horror scenes where they're trying to, add all these, like, horror creatures and monsters and whatnot. Not just in that, but this movie has some of the worst, most obvious de-aging CGI I've ever seen. To make the child actors still look like children, it was pathetic. It has so many, and again, I'm kind of worried that this video is going to get flagged now for because I'm talking about this again. But this movie had some of the most pedophilic imagery I've ever seen. It had some of the most pretentious bullshit writing I think I've ever come across in a movie. I don't even know. Look, guys, my review is still up, okay? The video's been censored, but it's still up. If you guys want to know how bad this film is, because I don't even think that I don't think I've got enough time here in this list to cover it and really articulate what I want to say about this film. But if you guys want to know how bad this film is, in my opinion, and you guys want to hear my point of view, check out my review, okay? I will leave a link in the description section to my review of this movie, and you guys can watch that. I did a long review on it. This movie was, in my personal opinion, vulgar. It was pretentious. It was long. It was boring as fuck. This is the most boring movie I've ever seen. I don't think I have ever been so bored and just wanted to conk out and fall asleep watching a movie before. Like, I was looking at my clock the whole way thinking, is this gonna end? When is this movie over? There was like another hour. It's I don't even know what else to say, guys. This movie was an absolute dumpster fire. An absolute piece of shit. Fuck It Chapter 2. Like, if you like the movie, that's fine. Alright, to each their own. I don't understand it. I don't understand about how a movie about a clown that murders children, I don't get the appeal there to begin with. But making it 3 hours long, making it a CGI fuckfest, making it have terrible forced humor, giving it some of the worst script and worst writing that I think I've ever seen in a movie. So we finally made it. We finally made it to the worst movie of 2019. Now, let me just make one thing perfectly clear. This movie was so bad that it makes the previous 9 movies on this list look like modern day cinematic masterpieces. I'm not even kidding. As bad as all those movies were that I just mentioned, there isn't a single other movie that came out this year, or in recent years, if I'm being honest, that comes anywhere close to being as bad as this movie. And of course, I'm talking about Black Christmas, which is a remake of a remake. So, I mean, I've spoke time and time again about how I can't stand terrible remakes. Well, here we have a terrible remake of a terrible remake. So, I mean, guys, this movie was so bad, and I said this in my review, like, to sum up how bad this movie was, about half an hour into this movie, and I'm not kidding here, guys, I'm being serious, about half an hour into this movie, numerous people in the theater walked out. Like, that's how bad this movie was. Like, I mean, people were just in shock. I was looking around the theater, there was 2 of us there, and there was like a lot of other people. It was a packed theater because it was on the day that the movie came out. And I'm not even kidding, by the end of the movie, most of the crowd had already left. And about half an hour in, there were already dozens of people leaving. It was that bad. And I mean, this movie was an abomination. I mean, I had an absolute rant in my review. And do you know, this movie came out on Friday the 13th, which is, of course, the day of bad luck, right? Well, that was that was the perfect day for this movie to come out, because anybody who saw this movie on Friday the 13th definitely had a shit ton of bad luck. And it's funny, the movie has absolutely tanked since its release day last week. Nobody's seeing this movie, nobody's talking about it. It's gone completely under the radar. This movie has just no sooner had this movie come out, it disappeared into obscurity. And I've had a look online too, and I've spoken to several people who also saw the movie in theater and whatnot, people online and whatnot, and a lot of people are saying the same thing, that in their theater numerous people walked out. And I remember when this movie was finishing, the people that were still there in theater, like, there was people behind me whispering, like, that didn't make any sense. Like, they were talking about so much about the movie that made absolutely no sense. And I even heard somebody say, I thought that was meant to be scary. I thought it was meant to be a horror. This movie was a flipping abomination. And of course, I went on to do some research because going into this movie, I knew nothing about it. I had seen the previous Black Christmas movie, the one from 2006. I hated that movie too. That movie was crap also. But this one makes that one look like a masterpiece. And I did some research because I knew nothing about any of the people behind this movie. Like I didn't know about any of the actors, or I didn't know who the director was. And it turns out, yeah, the director of this movie is a complete piece of shit. The director before the movie came out said that the movie was that she was going to put politics and propaganda ahead of actually making a good movie. So this was another movie that was just made. They knew they weren't going to make money with this. Just like with Charlie's Angels, they had their excuse planned. They were going to release this movie, and then when the movie failed, they were just going to blame men and talk about toxic masculinity and shit. And that's what they did with this movie. They released this movie purely out of spite. This movie was basically a hate letter to all white men. Do you know what the moral of the story of this movie was? The moral of the story of this movie was that all white men are rapists, all white men are murderers, and all white men should be burned should be burned alive, basically, because that's how the movie ends. Literally, the final scene of this movie is all the white men in the movie are in one room, and the woman basically throws a firebomb in and burns them all alive and shuts the door and then makes a joke, and that's how the movie ends. So that's the moral of the story is burn white men, burn them at the stake because they're all evil. Because apparently we're all rapists. I didn't know that I was a rapist, but that there's a scene in this movie where one of the white dudes says, "Look, not all white men are rapists," and and one of the women responds. She says, "Yes, they are." So that's what this movie was. This movie was essentially hate speech propaganda. It was a hate piece against white men, and it was. I mean, again, it's supposed to be a horror movie, but there was no scares whatsoever. And look, I covered all this in my review. Yeah, this was the worst movie of 2019. It was the worst movie I've ever seen. I would definitely. I mean, look, guys, you guys know how much I hated the movie The Festival that came out last year. That was my worst movie of 2018 on that list. Well, I would rather watch The Festival than this. That should tell you everything you need to know. So, yeah, that's my top 10 worst movies of 2019. This movie, Black Christmas, was just. I hope to God that everybody involved in the making of this movie is ashamed of themselves. I'm not. You should be ashamed of yourself for being associated with this movie. I'm not even kidding. So yeah, that's my top 10 list. Stay tuned for my top 10 best movies of 2019. That's going to be coming out in a couple of days. I'm really looking forward to doing that list. So yeah, let me know what you guys think anyway. Thanks for watching, and God bless each and every one of you. Stay tuned for my next video.